All right, welcome to Mr. Miller's Woodshop podcast. I am your host, Bobby Miller. Today I'm talking about one of my favorite hobbies, pastimes ever, and that is maple syrup production. Now, before we get into that exciting, you might not think it's exciting, and if you don't, this would be a great one to skip. But I think every woodworker should be someone who harvests maple syrup or helps that community go, or just gives their insight or their scrap wood at least. But before we get into that, please make sure you like, subscribe, rate the podcast, follow me on all the social media. I'm not doing this just for me, okay? I've had this conversation probably 20 times in the last 10 days because I love making maple syrup. So I'm heading there now. I'm heading out. It's spring break in Minnesota right now, beginning of March 7th. And I'm not sure when this one's going to come out, but by the time you hear this, it's not going to be the appropriate time for you to tap maple trees anyway. So maybe I even schedule this one out a year so that I'm inspiring lots of people in January to start saving their scrap wood so that they too can burn with the scrap wood. And for those who have no idea what I'm talking about right now, a maple tree produces sap that when boiled down becomes maple syrup. Okay, it's a big hobby of mine. So the syrup that you buy in stores, not the organic natural, has potassium hexafluoxide or some sort of chemical in there to be an imitation maple syrup, and that's no good. Okay, in my household we do all natural, all organic, and I'm not saying anything is better than anything else, but that's just what my family has chosen to do. I do enjoy the taste of the imitation stuff. Grew up on it, love it. But when my family decided to make the change to a little bit healthier option, not so much processed, the price tag really made me jump. Okay, and I'm like, oh my God, okay. How do they make this organically? And then I started to do some research, and I joined some Facebook groups. And seriously, the Facebook community page for maple syrup or epoxy river tables or just woodworking for beginners, like, really has some cool stuff. So pour into those communities and positively pour into those communities. Don't just rip people or talk trash. I joined a welding one a couple of years ago when I was teaching welding, so I thought, hey, I'll try to see what everybody else is doing. I got roasted almost everything I posted, trying to get better. And so don't do that, and that's not the way that the maple syrup community is, but there are lots of people looking to help you get better. And so first year I figured, okay, you boil down sap. I filled up a whole turkey fryer with sap. Took like 2 hours to even get it to boil because it was like 35 degrees out, and I'm just doing this on my deck and wondering, like, okay, this is going to take some time. And so let it cook all day. It was 2 years ago, so kids were still super young, and I had my middle boy. So it was I had a baby and a toddler, which is not an ideal time to start a new hobby, by the way, but maple syrup might be, because we go through the pancake syrup, I tell you what. So I got that going with the turkey fryer. Make like a gallon. I've got a couple maple trees on my property. Box elder. I've got amber maples. My parents have silver maples. My in-laws have sugar maples. And so there's lots of science that you could break down. Like, really, this podcast could be like 6 hours long if you really want to get my take on maple syrup. Like, that could be a whole series, like that kid. All right, we could talk about this forever, and maybe that's what we have to do. But we definitely have to have an annual talk about maple syrup. And a lot of the woodworkers that I know actually do this. Okay, I was at Menards the other day, and in the lumber area, but I saw a guy with like 10 buckets, and I said, hey, you collecting sap for maple syrup? And I had some buckets in my car too. He's like, yeah, you do too? And we had like a 20-minute conversation. I was with my wife too, and she's enjoying it, but it's like, okay, I enjoy the product, but the actual making it is so fun, because once you take that step above the turkey fryer, and not to say that it's better than anything else, but if you go to a actual arch, is what it's called, the thing to make maple syrup, I made mine out of cinder blocks, so I could have 4 restaurant pans, 6-inch deep restaurant pans. with a fire. So the cinder blocks raise up the restaurant pans. The fire goes underneath the restaurant pans. Ex facto, you have a boiling apparatus that can boil that sap down to maple syrup quick. The professionals, the ones with the Dauntless, can get up to 6 gallons of boil off per hour. And I am proud to say that last year I was able to do that too. And tomorrow I am going to hopefully recreate that or even advance beyond that, because the secret thing is heat. Now, a lot of my friends do this too, and they're forced to split wood or get kindling or gather around their property. I do that, all right, but I also have this access to all the tinder firewood that you could possibly imagine. So projects that don't work out, pieces that would go in a garbage can, that is what I harvest. Those that are kind of looking to correct me on this, none of the stuff that I burn could possibly be used for anything other than like a ring assignment or a small toy assignment. Like, these are the projects, or these are the pieces of wood, but it's like they would get tossed in a trash can. And that's I've got a very strict policy on that. Like, I'm not just cutting up anything to burn at my house, okay? So I've got access to that, and I can get that fire underneath the pans in my arch just red hot, just scorching. A couple times I had like 6 foot tall flames coming out the back of my chimney stove. I'll post a picture in the thumbnail so you can know what I'm talking about. But boy, it is a trip. Okay, so going back to the process, I'm going to go through a lot of tangents on this, I'm guessing, but the process is you discover the maple trees, you drill a 5/16 hole into the tree about 1.5 inches deep. Now, there's a lot of opinions on this, right? Should it be 7/16? Should it be 3/16? I've had success with 5/16. I've never tried anything else. I have not angled my drill bit, which a lot of people say angle 10 degrees up. That changes the size of the hole to more than 5/16. And I noticed dripping out of some trees that I tapped last year. So I did this year, no angle, perfect 5/16 hole, and the tap or spile gets hammered into the tree until it thuds, okay? Until that tap either bottoms out or it creates a seal and the tap just thuds. Sap will run out of it, hopefully right away, but sometimes it's not immediate. Sometimes that sap has to kind of go for a little bit, or the tree needs to thaw. Like, I jumped the gun. I was probably about 3 or 4 days early this year, so each time I tapped, there was only one tree that spat out any sap. And this is a family affair. I don't encourage you to do this alone. Have some fun with some family members doing this. Like, this is a community event, in my opinion, and so my kids are loving this. Like, they're all on board. We're going up north to tap some trees at my in-laws' property, and it's like the most exciting thing in the world to them. And like, it's exciting for me too, because the sap drips down into the buckets, and the buckets is where you store all that sap. You got to keep it like milk, so it's got to stay cool. There's a timeline on this, and like this isn't woodworking. This is probably not the area for this conversation, but I just find so many woodworkers who do this. George Von Driska from Woodworkers Guild of America is posting on his Instagram page about how he's doing it with his wife, and they're making maple syrup. And the woodworking networks, Sampson. I'm blanking on his first name, but his last name is Sampson. He was up in Maine, and so he's in that climate where you can tap some maple trees, and just like, gosh, how much fun, especially because those of us in the north, we have been cooped up for so darn long. I mean, in January, it hardly got above zero, and so we finally got some sunshine. It's starting to feel good. Daylight savings time is this weekend, so like, it's morning in America, right? It's like, we got so much good on the horizon. We're entering the golden age of maple syrup, is what my dad likes to say, and we're just enjoying ourselves. So I'm on my way now to my hometown. It's in the city. Okay, it's about 5 miles north of Minneapolis, and I'm going to gather the sap, bring it home, and hopefully boil off a whole bunch tomorrow. And the plan is pancakes tomorrow night, so we better be ready to have some maple syrup for us. I absolutely love it, and the wood that I have access to is super helpful. it's new every year. So I posted at some point in the last couple months on my Instagram page some pictures of it. I did this teaser little prompt. I soldered together some copper pipe to make a siphon so that inside of my 4 restaurant pans where the sap is boiling, I can equalize the level, because last year I wasn't happy by just sitting next to the pans while the sap boiled, spooning the high pans into the low pans so I could get a better boil. On the Facebook community page, they're like, hey, you need a pair of these siphons. Do you know how to solder? And I said, yeah, I can probably figure that out. And Greg Olson, if you are listening right now, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I've done soldering at my house for some personal projects and things like that, but he ran through my class as a soldering demo like nobody's business, okay? He does HVAC for a living. He goes around to schools doing this. He brought all the equipment to my school. We didn't have to pay for any copper. He had all the tools, all the torches, everything ready to go. He just needed a couple chaperones to help. And so I punched in as a chaperone. We had our volunteer there who's always there, help solder. He knew what he was doing soldering. And so it kind of became, I'm a part of the class learning how to solder. But here I'm less equipped in my own garage, but like I've got enough to do it. I burnt my hands a whole bunch, but I created these siphons based on skills that I had. Okay, so my students who go into accounting or medical or engineering, those of you guys who are listening right now, take the skills that you had from woodworking and shop class. Like, you can apply them in other areas of your life that will just enrich your life so much. I mean, I can't think of a better picture of enrichment than maple syrup. So I'm just showing up to my site here to harvest from the big, beautiful silver maples of Spring Lake Park, suburban Minneapolis. But hey, we got the maples, right? And what's fun too is the science in all this. Okay, I'm typically not a science guy unless it's talking epoxy river tables or maple syrup. And so I get to put on my scientist hat, play with some solder, think about the percentage of sugar maples to silver maples to red maples to amber maples to box elder. I wish I had some walnut trees or some birch trees on my property, because I wouldn't mind tapping them and kind of segregating those sap and try and get a different flavor out of the syrup. But I mean, it is a great thing. My kids are 4, 2, and 1, okay, and I've got them all involved in it. So there's really no excuse for not doing it if you've got a maple tree. Each year I've put a cap on $100 to what I'm actually going to spend on maple syrup. And so that's what I would spend throughout the year. That's what I budget for this hobby. And last year I got through 6 gallons. I collected 6 gallons of syrup, which is about 250 gallons of sap. Processed that, stored that, canned that, and all that equipment, right, that they make now, you don't have to have. Okay, when I'm finishing my syrup, and I'm at 217 degrees on my thermometer in my kitchen when I'm finishing the syrup, so I'll boil in my arch outside. I called it my cinder evaporator because it's cinder blocks that evaporates the sap from the maple syrup. I'm sorry, folks. I'm just on the best time of spring break is here. My favorite hobby is here. Played pickleball yesterday. Played hockey a couple weeks ago. I got a full week with my family and maple syruping, and it's just so cool. So you don't need all that fancy stuff. Okay, turkey fryer. I even saw on the Facebook page a couple of guys that just put some blocks, some cinder blocks, next to each other. Turkey fryer, like a big old pan, and then excuse me here, pan up, and I got a call. I hope I didn't lose you guys. Nope, looks like we're still recording. Good. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up so I can call my wife back. But you don't need all that fancy stuff. Okay, I really got to go now. She's calling a second time. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful spring break. Talk to you soon. Bye.